Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head up to Ellon in Aberdeenshire which of course is home to Brewdog. So we've got another review from them, and this is one of their beers that has been really widely available for a little while, but I've just never got around to trying it. It's available in most of the supermarkets actually. So for this one we're going to have a taste of the Slot Machine. This one is a red rye IPA and it comes in at 5.2%. It was rated into the high 3 stars on Untappd when I checked out earlier. It had an 84 overall on Rate Beer, and I think it was a 94 within the speciality grain category that they have on there. As I always say though, take Rate Beer with a bit of a pinch of salt. It is an American dominated site, and but it does give you a fairly decent barometer as to how good your beers are going to be. Brewdog tends to be a mixed bag these days. You either get something that's really pretty bloody good, or you get something that does tend to be quite disappointing. So hopefully this is one that's in the former of those two categories, but we'll see how we get on with it. And as always, I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brewdog before. No doubt there will be some more in the near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city or state, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Brewdog then. So as I've told you many a time, Brewdog is the love child of two guys, James Watt and Martin Dickey, and they were founded back in 2007 at a small brewery in the Keswick Industrial Estate in Fraserburgh in the very northeast corner of Scotland, right on the tip of the monster's nose, as I always like to say. But more recently, I believe it was 2010 or 2011, they moved to their very new, shiny and purpose-built facility in Ellon, which is closer to the city of Aberdeen, where I used to study chemistry. And these guys were known initially for being a very, very experimental brewery. By and large, they're regarded as the craft brewery who really brought the American craft beer styles into Scotland, although recently, as I say, there's been a little bit of questionability, I guess, over the sort of quality of beers that they're putting out. But in the early days, they really cited Stone Brewing Company as one of their main influences, and if you tried the Stone IPA and compared it to Punk IPA, you really could see that kind of comparison there. These days, though, they do have a kind of thriving chain of brew pubs throughout the country. Now, these started, of course, in Aberdeen. They spread down to Edinburgh and Glasgow. I think the Aberdeen one opened back in 2010, and now they're as far afield as Tokyo in Japan. Of course, there's one in Sao Paulo in Brazil, and I think they're looking at opening up their first bars in Australia and New Zealand these days as well. Of course, they do have their second brewery over in America as well, in Columbus in Ohio. They've also started distilling spirits as well, which will be released under the name Lone Wolf Distillery, and they're currently building the Overworks, which will be their project for sour beers. They're doing that at their brewery in Ellon in Aberdeen as well. But much of their kind of massive growth that they've had over the last 10 years or so, the last 11 years as it will be now, has been due to their kind of Equity for Punks program that they have. So this is where fans of the brewery can buy shares in it. It goes to funding their new bars, it goes to actually funding new tanks and all this kind of thing for the brewery. That's how they've done it really. So if you are studying a business degree, Brewdog are a company that are quite interesting to study to see how they've done it. But a lot of it, if you go and read about it, has kind of been done on ego and things like that. Like James Watt openly admits in his book that he was actually lying to banks and things like this to get loans and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting to see how he actually did it. But yeah, it's an interesting company. As I say, their beer, the quality of their beer in my opinion has dropped a little bit over the last little while, but as you see, you can still get some really pretty good beers from these guys. I'm trying to remember the last one that I had. There was a milk stout that they did recently that I was really impressed with. But usually the darker beers I've found tend to be of the same quality that they were in the early days. It's some of the IPAs and things that have dropped off a little bit. Although that said, the original Hazy Jane before they changed the recipe was really good, and the collaboration with Cloudwater has been pretty damn good as well. So just keep an eye out on them, try their different beers and see what you think, and I'll be reviewing some of these beers, as I said, for you on the channel. This is review number 120 or so that I've done from these guys over the years. So we'll see how we get on with this one. That's all you really need to know about the brewery just now. You can follow them on Facebook, you can follow their bars on Facebook. Each of their bars have an individual page and all of that, but you can keep up to date with what's going on at Brewdog if you are so inclined. But anyway, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself. So this one, as I mentioned to you, is a 5.2% red rye IPA. It says on the side here, Slot Machine. Stack those quarters and prepare to paint the town red. Citrus and toffee malt on the nose is rapidly followed by an intertwined floral sweetness and subtle rye spiciness, fruity notes and a little caramel. Sweetness ebbs to a final bitter payout. Embrace the crimson-faced one-armed rye bandit and rack 'em up. Slot machine, hit the jackpot every time, and it tells you a little bit about Brewdog kind of underneath that. This one, of course, does seem to be aimed at the Japanese market as well, because it's got Japanese on the side. Best before the 20th of October 2018. It does actually have a seasonal sticker on it as well, so that's maybe why in recent times I haven't seen it so much in the supermarkets. Maybe this one is one that is released, as I say, only for a couple of months of the year, so it probably will appear a little bit later on. There you can see the standard Brewdog bottle cap on this one. This one, incidentally, is a 660ml bomber, because I could only find the 4-pack cans, and to be honest, when I'm reviewing beers I only usually want the one bottle to try. But yeah, you know, that's all you really need to know about the beer. There wasn't the hops and malts on the website when I checked earlier on as well. But yeah, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting and see how we get on. Nice smoky opening there as we open it up, and we'll get it out and into the glass. So yeah, get that. That's quite a nice kind of coppery mahogany colour, this one. There you are, we'll just let that settle down a little bit. And there you go. It's actually, I'm just looking at the camera control down there, it looks a lot darker than it actually is. Although, that said, when it's all kind of grouped together, when it comes out the bottle, it does appear like a sort of mahogany kind of copper colour, but it actually looks more like a really dark kind of red ale or something like that when it's come out. You can see there's a solid finger and a half of a frothy but also bumpy kind of beige tan here on that. You can really smell some of the rye and kind of caramel notes to this beer. If this beer wasn't quite as dark, I think it would actually be quite clear, to be honest with you. It doesn't look all that hazy, but I think definitely a dark ruby colour, this one. It's almost the same colour as the well, you can't see the chair, actually there's a chair just behind me that's a really dark sort of ruby colour, but it looks really, really nice. It looks more like a red ale than anything else, and that head definitely more of a kind of light, almost fawn beige kind of colour. But this beer, it's actually a really interesting smell. It's got a nice, it's a really interesting combination of things. It looks exactly as you would kind of expect from a rye IPA. You do expect a sort of coppery, almost mahogany colour. Not quite ruby, I would say, but it does, you know, I guess you could expect that when it's a red rye IPA, to be honest, rather than a straight up rye IPA. But if you take a closer look at the aroma, it actually smells pretty nice, this one, I have to say. So yeah, you can definitely smell that nice almost rye breadish base to it. It's definitely got that little bit of spicy character to it, but there's a lot of sweet caramel in there as well, and almost some kind of digestive biscuit. That is actually a nice aroma that's coming out of this one. I do like that. When you sugar it up, you get a little bit of earthiness from the hops, I think, and there's definitely a bit of a kind of floral, grassy presence as well, and some of the fruity, the kind of citrusy notes are coming out there. There's almost a little bit of an orangey character to this one, but there is a little bit of a kind of grapefruit note in there as well. I think there's a bit of a tropical fruity note coming out of this beer. Pardon me. But yeah. Yeah, the aroma to this one is actually quite nice. As I always say, just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma for yourself before you get stuck in. I mean, this beer for me, as I say, nice caramel, a little bit of a rye, bready malt base, some biscuity sweetness. There's almost a little bit of a kind of woody character to this one as well, which is quite interesting. It does remind me of some of these beers that have been aged in barrels a little bit. It does have a little bit of that almost kind of cherry wood spice that you get in some of these American bourbons and stuff like that. It's almost just a little bit like that. So just take a quick note for that. As I say, a little bit of earthy hop, a little bit of kind of floral, grassy character, some citrusy notes. I think a bit of grapefruit almost, and a little bit of a kind of orangey note in there as well. But it does smell quite nice. Just take a little bit of time and enjoy that aroma for yourself. But let's get stuck into this one then. I'm really interested just to see how this beer tastes. So this is the Slot Machine, a red rye IPA at 5.2% from Brewdog. It's, in a way, I guess, this beer, I'm wondering if this beer will be quite close to the Albino Squid Assassin that they had a couple of years back, actually. Yeah. That's actually a decent beer, that. I mean, in comparison to what you've had from Brewdog at certain times, particularly in their early history. You know, if you think about how impressed you would have been with the likes of, you know, Hardcore IPA or Mr. President as it is now, because I think it's pretty much the same recipe, or Punk IPA in the days when you tried it. This beer isn't going to blow your socks off in the way that those beers would have back in the day, but it's a nice, you know, it's a nice beer, this one. It's easy drinking. It is this, I mean, see, to be honest with you, in terms of like a supermarket beer, because that's what this one is, I'm sure it's only actually released, apart from their bars, of course. I think you can get this one in the bar. As a supermarket sort of craft beer, I can see why they've kind of, from the marketing perspective, I can see why they've done that, because it is a really nice kind of easy drinking beer. In terms, if you think of a, for example, in the UK, you've got a lot of these real ale drinkers who drink the English bitters and stuff like that. In a way, this is a beer that's sort of a good gateway for them. If it's one that has that sort of grainy malt base that you expect of an English real ale, but it just gives you a little bit more in terms of the sweetness that you'd expect and the sort of hoppy qualities that you'd expect from these American craft beers. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they were going for, but if I tried this beer blind, that would be what I was thinking about it. It reminds me a little bit of the actually of the Badera Bitter that I had from Nynäshem's own brewery over in Sweden. Actually, one of the first craft beers that was ever produced there. It's almost like one of these English bitters, if you like, that just has a bit of an American hop quality to it. That's the beer this one really reminds me of, to be honest. And to be honest with you, I've spoken on the channel a few times about how I'm not a great fan of the English bitters, and when it comes to English real ales, I'm really more into the stouts, the milds, and the porters and the brown ales, to be honest. I was never really a great fan of the English bitter as a style, but see, if more of them were actually like that, I could be encouraged to get into them a little bit more. You know, if you could produce an English bitter that was a little bit like that, then I would actually be encouraged to drink the style a little bit more. And I'm sure I said the same about the Badera Bitter as well, when it had a little bit more of a kind of fruity quality to it. This beer, I think, as I say, my interpretation of it would really be that it's a good gateway beer for those who are used to drinking English bitters and stuff. If you are that sort of drinker, maybe like, of course, I'd be interested actually to hear Terry from Terry's Quick Beer Reviews. It would be interesting to hear what his take on this beer would be, because he really is one of these bitter drinkers. It would be cool to see what he thinks of this one actually. But for me, it's a good gateway beer for real ale drinkers to come into the kind of craft beer side of things. So I do like what this one's trying to do actually. But yeah, rather than blabbing on about it, let's actually kind of analyse the beer itself. As I always say, sugar it around your palate a little bit and just let your whole mouth adjust to the beer before you start analysing it too much. But for me, this one's nice. The sort of rye, spicy character that comes out of it does build a little bit, and it's probably a little bit more bitter in the malt base than a kind of traditional English bitter would actually be. So for me with this one, you've got that nice kind of brown bready quality there. That blankets the middle of your tongue. You do get some of that kind of grainy quality there. I do wonder if they've used English malt in this one rather than the the American malt. They probably will have used American or German pale malt in this beer, I would think. But when it comes to the sort of grainy side, it definitely, as I was saying, has that kind of English bitter quality to it. The red rye has a little bit of sweetness right in the middle of your palate. You can feel a little bit of that kind of digestive biscuity sweetness, and as the beer goes on and further into the aftertaste, that's when you start to get a bit more of the kind of thicker sweet caramel out of it. I would say that. Yeah. Definitely, in the middle of your palate, it's definitely got a bit of that kind of caramel presence. So around the edge of that sort of circle that you have in the middle of your tongue, that's when you start to get a bit more of the biscuity note, and then it morphs into this kind of grainy, almost rye quality thing. The rye, for me, the red rye quality in this is quite sweet. I love German rye bread. Used to eat it all the time when I was living over there, so I'm quite used to the flavour, and the red rye for me is always just a little bit kind of sweeter than the regular rye, so that kind of contributes a little bit, I think, to the sort of biscuity and caramelly qualities that this beer has. In terms of the hoppiness, back corners of the palate, you've got a little bit of earthiness in there. As you come further forward, you can feel a little bit of that sort of floral, aromatic-y kind of spice to the beer, but you can feel a little bit of earthiness just underpinning that beer. As you go round the front curve of the palate, it's just a little bit lighter and grassy, and then of course behind the front curve of the tongue, that's where you start to get some of these nice fruity notes from the hops in this beer. As I say, I'm pretty sure it's American hops, and knowing Brewdog, it probably will be the American hops that are in this one. I do wonder if there's a little bit of cascade in this one, because it does, the kind of flavours that this beer has, it reminds me a little bit of the some of these Cascadian dark ales that the likes of Beerbibliotek from Sweden and some other breweries are doing. So I do wonder if there's a little bit of a cascade in this one. It would be quite interesting to know. But yeah, in terms of this beer, there's definitely a little bit of grapefruit there. Just if you go behind the front curve of the tongue, as I always say, that's where you get that little oily bubble where these fruity esters come out. I think there's a little bit of grapefruit there. There's some kind of orangey note in there as well, but then as you progress further and further into this beer, I think you start to get a little bit of a kind of red, almost candied fruity ester out of this beer. It's a little bit kind of I think there's a little bit of that almost Haribo Star Mix shaped, those little heart shaped sweets. There's almost a little bit of that kind of candied red fruit note to it, which is interesting. Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a red fruit presence to it, but for me it's mainly more of that kind of slightly darker grapefruit flavours just sitting there behind the front curve of the tongue, which is nice. But overall, as I say, this is quite a nice beer. It's got pretty much everything you would expect. For me, it does feel a little bit like a kind of English bitter, with a little bit more of a kind of American hoppy twist to it. So as a supermarket beer, it's probably the ideal one for them to put in there, because it would be a good beer to convert some of the real ale drinkers into craft beer drinkers, if that makes sense. But in terms of the Brewdog beers, it's probably not, if you're quite seasoned when it comes to their beers and you remember what Punk IPA used to be like and stuff like that, it isn't one that's kind of going to blow your socks off and things like that, but it's a nice easy drinking beer, I think, and it'd be interesting to try it as a cask conditioned beer actually, and see how it would stand up against some of these bitters. But they've done a fairly nice job of this one, and I would drink it again, I would say that about it, but it's not one of the Brewdog ones that is going to kind of blow your socks off, if you like. So in terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say this one is probably mid-bodied. Carbonation's quite smooth. It does have a little bit of an oily mouthfeel, but it leans a little bit more towards the wet side of things. Good little bit of hoppy bitterness to this beer. It does linger into the aftertaste. There's a bit of sweetness from the malt base, but there's also a little bit of bitterness from the kind of rye, grainy qualities that it has as well. I do wonder if there's a bit of English malt in there, and there's a little bit of a kind of juicy, fruity note to this one as well. But overall, it's a nice beer. This one's all about how the kind of flavours kind of blend together, and as I say, probably the best take I can give you on this one is that it's one that would be good in terms of converting some real ale drinkers, like the English bitter drinkers, into drinking something that's a little bit more hoppy and a little bit sweeter in the malt base and stuff like that. But they've done a decent enough job with this one, and I would drink it again. So yeah, that's the Slot Machine, a red rye IPA at 5.2% from Brewdog in Ellon in Aberdeenshire, Scotland. Quite widely available in the supermarkets. I think it will be out just now though, because it is a seasonal, but from what I gather, but I'm sure you'll see it back at some point soon. So have a go at it for yourself and see what you think. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews, and I will catch you guys very, very soon. Stand you just now, the Slot Machine from Brewdog up in Ellon in Aberdeenshire. Cheers.